Welcome to the Larry Kreider's Leadership Podcast. Larry is the author of over 40 books, the founder of Dove International, a worldwide family of churches and ministries in 6 continents, and has over 50 years of leadership experience. He and his guests will share inspirational leadership insights from their journey with God. These insights, gleaned from serving leaders in many nations, will transform your life and leadership. For more information on Larry's books and resources, visit LarryKreider.com.
Welcome to the Larry Kreider Leadership Podcast. Larry Kreider here. So glad you've joined us again today. With me in the studio today is Bobby and Wanda Alger from Winchester, Virginia. Welcome.
Hey,
glad to be here.
Yeah,
Man,
good to be
I
here.
think we've met so many years ago in Harrisonburg, I remember
That's right.
correctly. You were serving on a pastoral team at that point, I think, in a church in
He was
Harrisonburg.
more full-time. I was raising kids.
You were raising kids?
Yeah, but she was
Right.
active. She was leading worship still,
Okay.
even when she was
Yeah.
raising kids.
And you guys are pastoring a dynamic church in Winchester, Virginia today. And we want to talk about leadership. Did you expect when you were kids that you'd be involved in leadership? We'll start with you, Wanda. Did you?
No,
Not
not at all.
Really?
No, I was a quiet introvert,
Really?
fourth in line of my kids. Yeah, it would have freaked me out to think I'd have to stand in front of people do anything.
Isn't that crazy? How about you, Bobby?
I don't know. I mean, leadership, no, but yet I was always, it seemed like that everywhere I was, even with a kid, I'd rise to the top leading something or, directing something. I'm the last of 6 kids, so you wouldn't think that the last
Right.
one would be the leader, but that seems to be how it's emerged today, even in my own natural family. So it's just odd. I wouldn't thought of myself as a pastor. In fact, 2 different people suggested I should be a pastor before I got the call of God.
Really?
Yeah.
And he didn't tell me that before we got married.
He did or did not?
No, he didn't, because he was in sales when we married. Because I said I'd never marry a pastor.
So that would have cut you out. All right. Now let's talk a bit about leadership. First of all, when's the first time, Bobby, you even thought maybe I'm called to leadership? As you look back.
Probably when I was in high school and then in college, there were roles that leadership was needed, and I was either selected by the teacher or I kind of was selected by my peers.
Okay.
And so from that point of view, I look back and I thought, wow, what is this that do I have a label on me, a tag or something,
Sure.
leader? But my peers would see that, and sometimes the teacher would see that and pull me into those positions.
Okay, and Wanda, how about you? When's the first time you remember thinking, well, maybe?
I was a late bloomer because I was a musician. I was the music major violinist. Right. And so even in the early years when we first met, I was always involved in the worship ministry, but I never looked at it because I was a leader. It was just I was a good musician. I could lead the teams. And then even with the prophetic, I was thinking about it today in preparation for this. I didn't think of myself as a leader until years later.
That is amazing. That's good for people to know, because we have many young leaders listening and think, well, I don't know if I'm called to be a leader or not, but God shows you at the right time and at least gives you nudges so you can know that, hey, maybe this is something God's called me to do or be. So talk about some of the first things let's do this. Talk to us about who you are today. What are areas of leadership you're both involved today? Wanda, we'll start with you.
I was involved in worship leadership for years.
Right.
That was my primary role in the church, was a worship leader, raising up teams, teaching.
Yes.
And then, when the whole prophetic gifting really started to emerge, then that was more intercessory. I eventually started writing and then speaking. And now, my ministry, even with Crossroads, is very minimal. I've got my own full-time
You have a global ministry. You minister to people around the world.
Over YouTube, I've got a lot of social media channels,
Right.
and worked with Intercessors for America. That really helped kind of gain the platform as well. And then the Lord told me about 8 years ago, start recording everything that He's been teaching me, and that's how I got into writing, because I never thought I'd be a writer. So, yeah,
And remember you came to me years ago and said, okay, I think I'm called to write. What's this look like? And I love what God's done with you. It's been amazing. And how many books have you authored at this point?
This is my sixth, this latest
Sixth
one.
book.
Uh-huh.
Wow. And now we're not going to have time in this podcast, but I want to interview you on your newest book, Words to Pray By. I love that book. We're going to talk about that. Bobby, back to you now. Let's talk about your early days here in leadership. First things you remember in leadership. What are areas of leadership you're involved in today? Obviously, you're a pastor, but talk about the whole deal.
Yeah, pastor. And then, the church was like 150 people for 15 years. And then all of a sudden, it just kind of exploded. In the right way, in a good way.
Sure.
I mean, people started coming, and I had a
I'm glad you clarified that in a good way. To
Yeah, right. And,
It blew up.
Not imploded, but exploded. No,
Right.
And I had a side business at that time.
I remember that.
And lawn mowing and little landscape, and I loved it. I farming background and stuff, and it was a way for me to get away and from what I normally do with people and pray and process. But things started changing, and I realized I couldn't do both anymore.
Right,
I really had
right.
to devote full time. Then the staff started growing. We started adding pastors, and now we have, including myself, 4 full-time pastors plus part-time staff, and. It's just a real, very different from where I operated, starting a church, doing everything. Now I'm at a level where I'm giving oversight, looking ahead. And that's kind of a new journey for me to really, being involved in everything and making all the decisions,
Sure.
to really delegate to others and trust how they would make decisions and so forth. And I'm still on that journey, but that's where I'm at today, giving an oversight to another church in town and into the church on their advisory team. And, we're building relationships in the community with other churches, and people are orphaned, just looking for a pastor, looking for a father. And so that's kind of growing. It's kind of new, but that's kind of where we're at.
Great. And now one thing I really wanted to spend a lot of time on in this podcast was how you've learned to walk together. Because I know you well, and you guys are a vital part of the Dove Global family. I've known you guys for years. And you're very different. Very different. Your giftings are very different. So how do you stay married, and how does this work? Because the way God wired you both. Wanda, we'll start with you. I mean, in the back, when did you realize that you guys are really different? Maybe when you're dating, or did it come later?
Well, what I always go back to is I prayed to the Lord. My older siblings did not have good marriages, and they fell apart.
Okay.
And I remember as a teenager saying, Lord, give me who I need, not necessarily who I think I want, but who I need to fulfill whatever you've called me to.
Good.
And I didn't know what that was. I just totally trusted the Lord with it. And so
Sure.
I grew up in a very dysfunctional home, a lot of drama. And Bobby, when I met him, stable, steady Eddie, and just provided what I needed. And it was a match made in heaven. I can honestly say that because I feel like the Lord knew we would need each other. It definitely was iron sharpening iron. But we went in with our eyes open. He recognized the call in my life because I was already in church leadership before he was.
Sure.
Of course, we didn't know all of what that would mean, but I valued what he added to my life, from the very beginning, and it's never changed.
That's so cool. Bobby, your response to that?
Yeah, obviously, when I met her or got to observe her, she was what I would call a celebrity in the denomination that we were in,
right.
And so that kind of scared me a bit. And then when we actually became a thing, again, I realized, well, she's just an ordinary person, but I didn't really know. She was a strong leader. She was leading worship teams, and that didn't really scare me at the time. But then, as we got married and we began the gifting that God had put in us began to emerge, and how that worked out, and how that was understood between us was really challenging.
Mm-hmm. Talk to us about how you're each wired, the different giftings that you have. Bobby, start with you. Like, how are you wired as a leader? And then, Wanda, how are you wired as a leader? And then how we make that work?
Well, I'm in the fivefold, I'm primarily a pastor.
Right.
I have some other things sprinkled in, but, primarily a pastor started out. Now I'm growing beyond that. But I'm very hands-on and very fix-it guy. I know the answers to things. And so when, she had the problems, I was the fix-it guy.
That sounds kind of scary.
Yeah, it is. And so it really took me a long time before I realized that she and God are smart enough to fix themselves or herself.
Yeah, right. Right.
And they didn't really need me. And that took many years for me to get to that place of confidence that whatever she's working out, if she wants my, input, she'll ask. But
so she doesn't want you throwing scriptures at her.
No.
Yeah, I learned that the hard way too many years ago.
So, that's just one of the areas that we grew in and we've grown out of now. I, honor her, respect her, champion her.
You did so well, both of you. Yeah. And talk to me.
Well, in the early years, we both knew that we had strong gifts when we got married, and that was evident in the first years of marriage. When we moved to Winchester and planted Crossroads, that was really when the prophetic began to grow much more in me. And that's where we began to feel the tension, because in those early years, I didn't understand the gifts enough to realize that, especially the prophet of a mantle, it automatically carries a level of authority, of spiritual authority. Right. Because he would used to tell me, Wanda, you just come across so strong. You realize how strong you come across. And I'm like, am I talking too loud? Am I too aggressive? What are you talking about? Because I was just speaking what I felt like the Lord, gave me. Sure. So it took a while for us to understand the giftings and what goes along with those. And then also just even the redemptive gifts. For us, because we were talking about it on the way up, that was huge. The motivational redemptive gifts. That was huge for us because we felt this tension of spiritual authority, because he was the senior leader in the church. I wasn't.
Right.
And yet because of what I would share and the conviction that I had, he felt emotionally like I was trying to take over. No way did I want the leadership of the church. And so the redemptive gifts really gave us a handle to understand of why I felt the way that I did. And even for me, I think that's the first time I recognized the level of leadership gifting that was there, because I actually was condemning myself. Wanda, just tone it down. Why do you have to do this? Why do you feel like you always have to be in charge? So that was really, it set us free when we understood how God had wired us, because he's a servant giver as well. Mm-hmm. And my primary is ruler and prophet.
Right.
So,
she's high test. High octane.
But, when you study those gifts, you learn not only...
You're talking about Romans 12 gifts, motivational gifts?
Yes.
Romans 12 gifts, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You don't only learn what the strengths are, but even I learned his language, basically what's valuable to him as a servant, as a giver, what's meaningful to him, and then he could do the same thing for me. And I think that's when we really shifted from feeling like we had to fight each other to really, okay, wait a minute, this is supposed to be a compliment, and learning more about how he thinks as, a pastor, giver, servant, and vice versa.
Right.
That really started things going in a positive direction for us, that we realized how we could complement each other if we were intentional about it, because it wasn't automatic.
Right. Now, you serve together in leadership in the church in different ways. Do you still do that today, or is your ministry one of taking you out to the world so much that really doesn't happen very much?
Yeah. Well, that was the other thing that really helped, and this may help some of the listeners too, especially women, because I knew God had put in my heart early on just a vision that I knew was bigger than even Crossroads.
Sure.
But I didn't know what to do with it. I was raising my kids at home, and all I had was the worship. And so I felt this thing going on inside of me, and I was frustrated myself because, a leader, when you have that gift, you want to lead somebody. You need a field. I didn't have my own. All there was Crossroads, because he would tell me, he would see the struggle, and he would even tell me, Wanda, you need a field to champion. I was like, okay, but there's nothing here, and I would even try to make things happen. It wasn't God's time, bottom line. I had to go through that process of learning how to steward my gift and how to bless him and work alongside him, serve him in the local church. That's what prepared me then. The Lord began to open doors outside of Crossroads that I could own, and that we really, okay, this is what I want to do. And so now it's complementing Crossroads. So I'm very much, I just really support him. I'm not involved in any of the ministries anymore at Crossroads. And it's a beautiful collaboration, but it took a while to get there.
Yeah, we each must find our own field. We each have to find that which we're passionate about, what God's given us. So I really affirm that. What else did you add to this, Bobby, in this whole process?
I think that the awakening first came when we joined Dove in 2000, and soon after that, we had Brian come down and do the prophetic ministry training. Right. And you guys are doing those workshops maybe more than you are today, or it's been done in different ways. But when he described the prophetic personality, I was like checking every sentence, I was like, wow. I think I have one of those.
I'm married this, right?
Yeah, I'm married to this. And it just never dawned on me before, what was happening. So that was kind of an awakening. And then just prophetically, different prophets and everything would call out the prophetic gift in her and everything. And it's like she said, just the gift itself has a strength to it.
Right.
And which carries kind of like a D personality type of thing. And I'm primarily an S personality with the disc. And so I'm the steady, stable one, but I'm actually afraid of D's.
Right.
And so there's a natural fear that's in there. And so then she was strong about it. So then I would not respond in positive ways. But then when I began to realize after we did the motivational, or we call them redemptive gifts out of Romans 12, I recognized that God had put that gifting in her and I didn't. I didn't have anything to do with that.
Yeah.
So I needed to accept and begin to champion and begin to really, cheer on the gift that God had put in her.
Beautiful.
And that began to bring peace in my heart. And so I really had to grow as a person in recognizing what God had put in her and to see that rather than try to form it to fit me or my personality. Okay. And that just took maturity and time.
Exactly.
And I think one of the things to help us do that, be intentional to draw out and affirm his gifting. Because even as a pastor and a prophet, I remember one time him telling me, Wanda, I don't know if you really care about the people. And I realized there came a point, because I am such a visionary, wanting to go forward, I was just sharing this, but I really wasn't paying attention to the people and the sheep. And he would tell me the kinds of things that he was dealing with and the questions and the situations. And it was like, oh my goodness, I need to pay attention to what he's carrying. And that was a huge difference. When he felt like I cared about what he cared about, then he could trust me a lot more, that I wasn't just out doing my own thing. And so that's what both of us had to do, was, again, to learn what do we have in our hearts, and can we honor that and really champion it, because then it just puts your defenses down. You really feel like you both recognize what God is doing, and you can cheer it on.
Beautiful, beautiful. So we look back, what have you done different maybe 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, or 20 years ago? You've learned all this now, and it's so right, it's so God. But there's a lot of people saying, I'm having a really hard time with this in our own marriage right now, involving leadership and church leadership or whatever kind of leadership. So what would you change? What do you wish you would have known back then that you know now?
Well, that's a tough question to answer, because you live your life, and you would, I guess, somebody said that I would make the same mistakes because it's my life. I just make them sooner.
I like that.
I think that we knew what we knew, and Dove was so helpful for us when we joined Dove, because what we came out of, the denomination and the network we were a part of, it was just wasn't really freeing for us who we were. Wasn't wrong with the network or denomination. It's just where we're at and where God was taking us. And Dove was so helpful. The counsel we got from our overseer, Ron, as well as Steve, some marriage counseling, and also Keith Yoder. We went to him for ministry counseling, and we actually did some other counseling and stuff at times. So
you reached out for help. And
we reached out for help. Yes. Yeah.
And that's why, really, because of your humility in doing that, that's why you're at the place you're at today.
Yeah. And I want to say that we didn't figure out all those things we just named here in the past 10 minutes on our own.
Right.
But yet there was times that we did. I tell people, if you want to prevent divorce in your marriage, there's 3 things you got to do. You got to talk about it. You have to pray about it, and you have to go get help.
That's good. Very good.
And if you do all those 3, then you'll survive anything in your marriage. And I think that's the same way in leadership, because I've noticed leaders that I have difficulty with, the sooner we can pray about something, the sooner we'll solve it. And I've actually had leaders say, I can't pray with you. And I was like, well, why? And they were like, well, it's not about you. It's just about where I'm at. And I know if I pray with you, then we'll figure it out. And I'm not sure I want to figure it out. And so that's a key thing for me. If I get into conflict, can we pray about it? And we, talk
So
about
good.
and pray about it. And then the third one is go get help.
Yeah.
And so we've done all three of those in our journey. And so we've been able to overcome.
Beautiful. What would you add, Wanda?
Two things come to mind. One is to be free of your baggage. We went through a season of time where I went through deep inner healing and deliverance, and we didn't have anybody else really to walk through that. He pastored me through it, and actually he was the crux of my angst in the whole deliverance, but yet it was God's hand on it. But we had to humble ourselves before one another, and that's huge. Just to get over yourself and to be willing to be real with other leaders and those that you need to get help from. And so personal freedom is key, because it'll put roadblocks all the time. If you feel like you've got to hide something, defend something, it's just, there's no greater freedom than knowing the enemy has no hold on me, like Jesus says. That's how I want to live my life. But the other thing looking back, and that I tell young leaders especially, is to learn what God has put in you, that gifting, like we keep mentioning, those motivational gifts, redemptive gifts. That can save a lot of heartache and time when you simply start partnering with what Holy Spirit has already put in you. To me, that's more important than the where and when. Where am I called? And when is it going to happen? Because once I got in touch with what God had put in my spirit and could begin to partner with that, then in some ways, it didn't matter where it would be expressed. That's the adventure of a lifetime, because different seasons will take you different places. But it was knowing, what is that message that he's given me? What has he graced me and anointed me with? Because if I walk in that, I can go to different places and it bear fruit, and I can work with different people and it bear fruit. So I wish that I would have known that early on, rather than looking at what am I going to do with my life? It's who am I going to be? That I can be that vessel that the Lord wants. And then it really gets fun, because you never know where that might take you and how things might change. But you're always going to be true to what he's put in you. Beautiful.
Love your story. It's so, of course, I've known you for so many years and seen God work in you so powerfully. So, Bobby, for you, your field of ministry today is basically the local church, serving others in local church leadership. And tell me if I have this right. And your sphere of ministry basically today, Wanda, is being a prophetic voice to the body of Christ throughout our nation, throughout the nations, and teaching and writing and et cetera. And so finding your fields has really helped you. I can really tell as we're sharing this together today. Is there anything else you say to a couple saying, man, we're just having a hard time? Anything else you would add to that?
Well, I think one of the things that I would say is to get outside your generation.
Good.
And begin to even ask questions to those in another generation, both younger and older. Because I think the older generation has something that our generation has to learn, and also the younger coming behind us, how they see things.
Right.
And so I think, if I would speak to somebody in a generation, I would say, get outside of your own, whatever's popular that your generation is doing, get outside of that and ask some questions and build some relationships. And that will mature you, because you get a different voice speaking into you than just your own generation that you're in.
Yeah. How about you, Wanda? Anything else?
Bring the kingdom into every sphere of culture. This next generation is very much, social media, entertainment, these other fields. Pay attention to what is going on there. What's going on in the world right now. A lot is being revealed as to what the enemy has been doing. And I believe it's on us as the church. We haven't been in some of these places. We haven't been willing to look at these fields of influence and these mountains of our culture. We have an opportunity to make a difference. We've got to make a difference, in the years ahead. And so I think it's just opening up our eyes beyond the fields. I mean, he's speaking generationally. I'm seeing just the culture.
Yes.
Because we're all in full-time ministry. We're in different fields as to where we serve.
Yeah. Now, you both are writers. I know, Wanda, your latest book, Words to Pray By. I want to do a whole podcast on this. I love this book. Tell us the other books you've written. Can you remember that? Can you pull them out of your memory?
The one before this, Moving from Sword to Scepter.
Yep.
Ruling Through Prayer is the Ecclesia of God, so that was pretty major. We've co-written a devotional, 21 Days, Making Room for His Presence, that we did. I did another small one, Prayer, that sparks national revival. That too was with Destiny. Oracles of Grace is a devotional that I wrote. My very first book actually was Exposing the Religious Spirit in the Spirit-Filled Church.
I remember that.
That was quite a while ago. And then I've done some video series as well.
Again, all this will be on our show notes. Again, check out everything Bobby and Wanda done in the show notes, the different, including your local church, et cetera, Crossroads. So you've got Living a Changed Life, Bobby. Is this your first book?
Actually, not. That's the second one.
Okay.
I wrote a little one that's that's similar to How to Be a Real Christian.
Oh, yeah,
right?
sure.
Yeah.
I did
so
see
it's
that.
my version.
It's really cool.
It's my version.
Like
it's called Why Say Yes to Jesus.
Yes, right.
And I put it in every one of our, every visitor that comes to church.
That's cool.
They're given that booklet. And it just walks through why we need a Savior.
I wish everybody wrote. I mean, everybody has life messages. I wish everybody could write, even if it's a small book, something.
Yeah.
Because I find you can have a conversation with someone, you can preach to 200 people or 500 people, whatever. That's all great. It's all good. But if you get something put in their hands, and they can, you can read that again and get it in their spirit. That's why I love what God's doing with the two of you in writing. Fantastic.
Yeah, I think it was you that said that use other people's material until you're able to write your own, if you can.
Yeah, I probably did say that.
Yeah.
I've told many people that.
And so I took that.
I'm so glad you've done it. So anything else you want our listeners to know about leadership? We're soon out of time for this first podcast. I want to get you both back. Anything else you say? If some of the younger leaders as you, what's the most important thing you've learned about leadership over the years? What would you say?
I would say stay in faith.
Okay.
That's a big thing, because particularly if you're husband and wife, or you're on a team and you have people that are working through either issues that are preventing barriers, or even their own issues to prevent barriers.
Yeah.
I mean, that can happen. That is just really stay in faith and
So
do what's
good.
needed to stay in faith. In other words, get encouragement from somebody else that's in faith. Read the Word, pray with somebody, and that would be my thing.
That's awesome.
Just stay in faith, and you'll break through.
You will.
Yeah.
Don't quit, right?
Right, don't quit. Yeah.
And how about you, Wanda?
Be yourself. Be authentic. When I first felt the call that I knew God had put something in me, I kept comparing myself with every other public figure or person that I thought I might be in their position. And I fought with myself because I can't be like that. Well, I don't know how to do that. And the Lord would just keep telling me, be yourself. Because you never know what, you add the Holy Spirit to that, and that's what brings out the treasure. So just be authentic and be yourself.
Be yourself and stay in faith. Love it. Thank you. Well, here on the Larry Kreider Leadership Podcast, we try week after week to learn just small things we can change. And by making those small changes, stay in faith, be yourself. Or by doing that, we'll see major differences come in our lives and the lives of those we serve. So, Bobby and Wanda Alger, thank you for joining me today for the Larry Kreider Leadership Podcast. We're having you both back. I want to talk about some of these books that you've written. And check out the show notes. These guys are being used of God in a major way in the kingdom right now. Great. Well, thank you for joining me today. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for our podcast today. We'll see you back next week as we continue to learn these small changes we can make. They'll make a major difference in your life and the lives of those you serve. God bless you. Have an amazing day in the Lord.
Thank you for listening to Larry Kreider's Leadership Podcast. If you want more information about any of Larry's books, daily devotionals, small group resources, or any other teachings, go to larrykreider.com.